interview this time is with Jackie Ward, and she and I have worked with each other for a long while, hasn't it now? We first met when she was working at a pupil referral unit and I was going in to support some children there, and Jackie now works as an independent SENCO. You've written 2 books. One of them is called On the Fringes, which is about avoiding exclusions, and you've written the primary SENCO handbook, haven't you? Which you can explain about. So you can show us your books, please, and tell us why you wrote them.
Right. Well, Lynn, On the Fringes, which is that, this was my baby, really. This was the book that I always wanted to write, having worked in a pupil referral unit, where I was actually the deputy head in SENCO. And we were getting in children who basically saw themselves as having failed and were really on the fringes of society. And the message to them was they weren't wanted. And why I was so passionate about writing my book was that when we came to look at the children who were excluded and came to the PRU, a lot of them had real undiagnosed special needs. The number of children that we had, which was why you came in to help us, a lot on the autistic spectrum, and they were seen as being naughty, but actually they weren't being naughty as well. They were having sensory meltdowns, or they weren't having the needs met, and basically the school didn't really understand how to meet those needs. And so it got me thinking. I thought, well, if it was just 1 or 2 children, but actually this is a lot of children who are coming. The other diagnosis was ADHD, particularly some of the boys who were very angry and came to us for table throwing and assaulting pupils and teachers, and were obviously a danger to themselves and others. Were undiagnosed ADHD, and in many cases the children, if we referred them into paediatrics, we got them that diagnosis. Because they were severe, they were medicated, but it was life-changing for some of them, because actually for the first time in their lives, and remember we are only talking primary children here, we're not talking secondary children, we could turn their lives around for them. And so really it has been my passion to spread the word, really, to say, actually, as a school, there are things that you can do. So On the Fringes was really very much based on inclusive child-centred needs-based practice, and, having a school ethos where early interventions were tried, things were picked up very quickly, we weren't leaving children, because another thing that schools were doing was they were leaving children till year 5 and 6, they were managing them, and then they would get to the upper juniors, they were bigger, they were stronger, and so then at that point, they couldn't be contained and they were excluded. And, there is a lot can be done. And it's very interesting, actually, because one of my schools I work in, I've been there a few years now, and strangely enough, the head there, she won't mind me saying this because I've said it before, I'd worked with her when I first started teaching, and so she was head at this school, and I went to work for her. And she was really trying to get a more inclusive ethos within school, because it's in quite a challenging area of the county, and there's a lot of need, lots of vulnerable children and families, and it had been quite high on exclusions. Anyway, we've worked together, and I think we're a real success story because we've really made that school into something special, I think. You know, the children come, and we sort them out very early on. So as SENCO, that is my prime thing, is
Yeah.
to make sure, you know, that these children are catered
And
to.
one of the things you went on to was to write that book, How to Be an Outstanding Primary SENCO, didn't
Yeah,
you? So
well,
you put
the
your
first,
experience into that.
that's right. So the first book, On the Fringes, that was my passion, and I didn't think I would write again. I thought, well, I've written my book, that's it. And then Bloomsbury asked me to write How to Be an Outstanding Primary at SENCO, which is one of a series of books of how to be an outstanding whatever. And I thought, I'm going to have a go at this, because not only do I work in 2 schools as a SENCO consultant SENCO, but I also support SENCOs around the county, and I still, you know, I go into different schools doing different things to help out, really. And what I was finding was that it wasn't just new SENCOs, it was existing SENCOs who were really struggling to manage workload, because not only were they SENCO, they might be a class teacher with more or less a full-time teaching commitment, perhaps an afternoon off a week to do the SENCO role, or they might have a senior management role in addition to that.
Yeah.
So one of the core purposes for me for writing the SENCO book was to think about really important things like time management and well-being, you know, self-care and well-being. And I thought, well, if I can spread the word that actually this can be done, and that actually we can be very solution focused, we can be very practical, we can cut down a lot of paper-based work, which is taking over. You know, SENCOs are often drowning in paperwork because of the rules and the regulations, and, you know, statutory duties, and applying for education, health and care plans. But I did find, as I was going round, Lynn, there was a lot of duplication. So SENCOs were producing paperwork for teachers to fill out, and quite often there might be 3 or 4 different pieces of paperwork that were all actually covering the same thing. So that was certainly something that I thought we could look at. And also looking at the environment, looking at the workspace, looking at how they organise themselves. And not every SENCO is fortunate in having a room or a workspace that they can be at. You know, some very small schools, or even bigger schools where there are no spare spaces. So again, I wanted to address all that kind of thing. And from then, the other thing I was finding was that SENCOs were becoming so bogged down in this paperwork, Lynn.
Yeah.
They weren't actually fulfilling the core duty, which was to look after children.
Right. Yeah.
Support colleagues and talk to parents. And I think those are the 3 core things of the SENCO role.
That's great, Jackie, and I know they're really valuable books. So the question I want to ask is you, thinking about where we are now and the SENCO role, how can we effectively support our SEN pupils within a pandemic and lockdowns and things?
Right. Well, obviously when it was the first lockdown, we were having to think on our feet, really, because it was a new situation for everybody. And obviously it was causing a lot of distress, because parents were suddenly being asked to be home educators, schools were running around trying to sort out resources, schools were being asked to do remote learning packages, and but I think in that first lockdown we did actually learn a lot about how we could tweak our systems to make them more effective for the children. However, the one thing about having the remote systems in place is that if you're not careful, you can lose the human touch. And I think children, some children, particularly if they were only children or perhaps had very young siblings that they couldn't really interact with on a one-to-one level, and then busy parents who were in some cases trying to work from home as well as home educate, you know, meant that the children were really feeling quite stressed out, and parents were stressing because they felt they weren't doing enough. So I think we've kind of gone through that, and now we're in this third lockdown, but it's closed schools again. It's important, I feel, as a SENCO to maintain contact with the children. I'll come on to parents at a later stage, but you know, talking to the children, asking them how they are, getting them to maybe record their thoughts, you know, perhaps in picture form or whatever, and share those thoughts with you and with the teachers. And I think now there is the systems are much better, and so children are able to share more readily with the teachers and speak to them, as well as just messaging via the internet. So I think we've got that right, but as a SENCO, I'm using my time to actually phone people up, check they're okay. Last term when we were open, and it was the first term that children had come back, and that was very difficult. And you know, I think we could again come into a transition situation if you know, things carry on as the way that they are doing. So it was hard because children had no transition between classes, no transition between key stages, no transition from primary to high school. And I think so as a SENCO, I think I found it quite frustrating really, because all the things that we knew worked for children in supporting those things were suddenly taken away from us, and we had to be a lot more creative about how we did things.
So was there anything that you said you're phoning people up, because obviously not all families have access to the technology, do they? So is there anything else that you found that has been quite helpful?
I suppose I've been fortunate that my parents, even my, you know, all my families have been able to phone. They might not all have computers and things, but the other thing that I have helped with and found useful is, because we had a lot of parents who didn't have access to technology, we did do a lot of paper resources as well. And so in a pandemic, in a lockdown situation, we've made sure that children have got resources that are tailored to their individual needs. And I think what I was having to do last time was because many of my children did not want to do the work that school provided. You know, particularly
It's a common problem.
a lot of children on the spectrum didn't want to do it. You know, one of my year 6 boys, well, he was a year 5 boy then, all he wanted to do was go on his Xbox, and his mum was tearing her hair out because he just would not knuckle down to anything that school sent. Then I've got other children that say, you know, to mum, it's not school, you're not my teacher, I don't have to do it. And it's an eye-opener really, because those children in the home situation have had quite a lot of power, I think, in the sense that they have, and I think probably, and you'll know this, Lynn, because a lot of children, particularly with neurodevelopmental conditions, there's a lot of underlying anxiety and panic, and often a need to control the surroundings, their own surroundings. And I think that because the children have felt very uncertain, they don't like change, they don't like the routines being disturbed, they don't like doing things differently. And so what has happened on many occasions is they have taken as much control as they can of the situation, so that they feel more comfortable and they feel that they can deal better with the changes that around them. And so I think for those children, what I've tried to do in the lockdown is to talk to them, talk to the parents, find out what their interests are, and see if we can, rather than trying to force them, not force them, but persuade them to do something that they're not going to do, is to get them to learn in different ways. So one of my boys was doing a lot with Lego, very practical things. And I talked with his mother and we found some nice activities that he could still do his Lego, but we could get a bit of learning in as well. Another boy had a fascination with, I can't remember what it just was, but let's say it was castles. So I suggested to mum that maybe rather than doing the topic that school wanted him to do, which he didn't want to do and he had no interest in, that maybe, and he was on the spectrum, maybe he could home in on castles and he could do some independent research. Scrapbooks was something that I thought were quite useful for children, to anything they've done themselves to put in a scrapbook, so that was there to, you know, all right, I might not have done that, but look what I've done. I've done all this. And again, that was something they could share then.
I also think that's lovely for parents to hear you talking about that as a SENCO, because, you know, this is what we've been hearing, isn't it, from a lot of parents as well, as what can I do with my child? And, you know, actually hearing from you like, well, it's okay, you know, we're going to let you do those things of your own ideas and your own interests is really good. Just hold on for a moment. I need some more light.
Right, is that better?
No, not yet. Hang on. Oh, there you go. That's better.
Right.
So sorry, I will stop that again. So I'll go into the next question as well. So Jackie, that's really helpful for parents to hear that. How can a SENCO support parents then while they're at home? You've already given some ideas, but do they need any other support as well?
Oh gosh, yes, absolutely, Lynn. I mean, one of the defining factors of this pandemic has been the stress and anxiety and worry that parents have had, and they've needed a lot of emotional support. So to give you an example, obviously everybody's been through one lockdown. Some parents have managed really well. Others have really struggled for one reason or another. And now we're in this lockdown where schools are closed yet again. Parents know what they know whether they can manage it or they can't. And so one of our children who, unfortunately, because of the virulence of this new COVID strain, all schools have had to restrict their intake and be very strict about it, confining them to key workers and the extremely vulnerable. So I've got a young man who's in year 6, and his mum came on the phone when she knew school was going to be shut, and said, and was crying her eyes out, because she said, last time I couldn't get him to do anything, and he's going to high school next year. He's bright, but he's very rigid in his thinking, and his view is, you're my mum, it's not school, and you can't make me. And so I had to be very calm with her and say, look, don't worry, we've got you back here. We're not going to just leave you to muddle through. We've got more experience now of how parents have reacted and what kind of support they need. So I said, as a school, we are here for you. So for some parents, if we feel they've needed some family support, I know a lot, you see, the trouble is, Lynn, a lot of the agencies aren't doing any face-to-face at all, are they? I think even social services are, or unless it's an emergency, are doing face-to-face work. And so, it quite often it can just be over a phone. However, I found that Home Start have been really good in the pandemic, and they have been doing visits, obviously very COVID safe and whatever, and doing a lot of work with parents to help them, because I've had other parents who are on their own, they've got several children, some of them are on the register because they've got neurodevelopmental. I've got a family of children where they've all got ADHD, mum on her own. So I think sometimes parents just need to sound off about it, and then what I try and do as SENCO is just talk them, slow them down, calm them down, and then see if we can problem solve things bit by bit. So again, I just think that is so important, and parents can easily feel like they are alone and they're on their own and nobody cares, and their child's not got the school place because they're not whatever they needed to be. And obviously we've got to stop the spread of this awful disease. But we can talk, and I think that is the human thing, isn't it? People if they just talk. So the lady who was crying down the phone, I said, look, just calm down, we'll go through it bit by bit. I gave her some suggestions. So we said, perhaps you could set a little timetable up for this child at home, so, he knows when he's doing what, build in some favoured activities that he likes to do. And as I was talking to Elaine, she said, you know what, I'm feeling better already. And it was that simple. We don't need to have sheafs of this, do that, do the other. I think keep it very, very simple, because what parents don't want at the moment is to be overloaded. They want you to come up with simple, and practical, and things that they can really get to grips with. And the other thing I'm finding, I'm in my stride now, the other thing I'm finding in this, when I've talked to other parents is, well, I'm anxious, so one mother of a boy on who's got ASC, well, I've got him in, she got him into a really good routine with his work in the last lockdown. Right, well, I know what I'm doing now. I've ordered him these books. We know they work for him, blah, blah. And I said to her, look, he doesn't have to work all day. yes, that's my guilt as a mum tripping in. I feel I need to make sure he's not falling behind, and etc. etc. And but she felt that the online remote resources that school were providing were perhaps not right for her child. But I said to her, but you need to adapt your routines to help your child, because that is fine for them. And so, and I also said to, and I've said to another parent as well, um, of a child who's got an education, health and care plan. It doesn't all have to be about reading, writing and arithmetic. I mean, they're important. And I said, if you can get little bits of that done, you know, let them do it in short bursts and you know, I said, but building independence, you know, getting them to be in charge of something. So this particular mum of this little boy had, you know, she said, well, at lunchtime, because it's winter and it goes dark early, she said, we take the dog for a walk. Right, well, let him be in charge of sorting the dog out for the walk, because she sorts the dog out. Let him find the lead. Let him find the coat. And I said, you know, it's about life skills. And I said, and actually, this is the perfect chance to build in those independent life skills that your child is going to need for the future, because he hasn't got a teacher telling him to do X, Y, and Z through the day. I said, and really, if you do everything for him, that's not going to help him when he comes back into school, because he'll have gone from a 1-to-1 where you're doing everything for him back to being 1 of 30 again. And so really that's not helpful for him. So she said to me, do you know what? She said, I agree with you 100%. And she said, and I really understand now what you're saying to me. And we talked about all sorts of things that he could do, you know, and I said, and even when he's doing some learning, find something that he can do on his own. I said, it's very tempting to hover by his side, because you know, the minute you turn away, his attention will wander to something else. But I said, you've got to give him those independent steps. So, you know, it was a bit of a light bulb moment. And then the mother of a little girl, also with an education, health and care plan, I said the same thing to her. Now, she said her little girl likes baking. Right, well, think of all the maths you can get into baking, weighing, ingredients. She likes going with her to the shop. Right, well, let's have a purse with some money in, and she can hand some money over or whatever. So and you know, they kind of don't see it as being an education. But actually, Lynn, for these children who are never going to be particularly academic, give them all these practical opportunities to do things and watch them fly, I think.
I like as well, as you as a SENCO are kind of giving that authority and permission to parents to do those things, which I think does give parents a bit of a boost, doesn't it? So have you any advice for SENCOs thinking about the organisation of this? Because in the end, you know, if it comes to an annual review, for example, we've got to show how they've made progress, haven't they, and things like that. So are there any tips of through lockdown how they record, because this is all learning and it's all great stuff that is showing evidence of progress, isn't it? You know, that they can go to the shop and they can use money and things like that. So how might SENCOs during this pandemic, when children are at home, sort of pull that information together in their paperwork? Have you any ideas about that?
Yeah, well, what I did do during the last lockdown, for instance, all my parents whose children have got education, health and care plans, what I said to them was, right, I'll send you a copy over, have a look at the, because it's not hard for them to look at, is it? We've already gone through it with them. They know what the objectives are. Have a look, and I said, and highlight anything that you think in particular as work you've been able to do at home that fits that little target? Because let's face it, Lynn, a lot of the targets are to do with independence, aren't they? Staying on task for so many minutes, So actually, a lot of the targets in an education, health and care plan can be adapted, I think, for as much at home as it can in school.
Mm-hmm.
So, and these were parents who we had to postpone the annual reviews because of lockdown, and we couldn't get together. I think I managed to get together with one parent remotely, but the others it was just impossible. And also I didn't want to. I think this is really important as well. When you're doing an annual review, you're not doing it to tick a box. Right, we've done the annual review. It's got to be relevant to what's coming next. So before summer, I didn't want to do these reviews because I couldn't say what was going to happen in September. So we agreed, and obviously I let the SEND office know as well, that we would postpone them until the children were back and we could have a proper look at where we were going next. And obviously that was really important in the first lockdown, because children were actually coming back into new classes, quite often with teachers they didn't even know or didn't know very well. So, I mean, one thing I did manage to do, we did have some children who were coming into school as key worker and vulnerable, and I did manage to do a bit of transition for those children because they were in school, but obviously the majority didn't get that. So then going back to the reviews, so I would say anybody who's got an annual review coming up, and I've got one, I've just postponed it, but this is actually for the child whose mother is wanting him to do X, Y, and Z all day and every day. But I've said to her, look, let's wait till he's back in school, and then, but what we can be doing is thinking about the targets, and a lot of his are related to independence, and for her to be jotting things down or highlighting, and then we can share those when we do the review. And I think that makes more sense. And actually, it's the thing is, Lynn, it's a two-way process, because actually, as a school, I have learned an awful lot about what has worked really well for those children in home learning. And so I've been able to take things on board. And, so I think we're working as a team, aren't we?
That's one of my hopes, actually, that through this time is that co-production that the SENCO to practice, tried to embed, as actually, because parents now are more expert and they do know what the child can learn and how they learn more, don't they? So when they go to these meetings, these annual reviews, they've got actually something really important to contribute.
Yeah.
We have to listen, and I'm hoping that it sort of really embeds that co-production much better than it has worked before.
I mean,
you're a person who does it anyway, but it's not across the board, is it? And you hear parents from other places saying, oh, I feel really intimidated in these meetings, but now they're coming as the expert, aren't they, as they were, you know what I mean?
And actually, I think that, I know there's not many good things coming out of the pandemic, but I think in terms of ways of working, I think that is a good thing, because for a lot of parents and schools, there is still a lot of us and them, and we can't have that. And actually, we're not having that because it doesn't exist anymore. And so, even when children came back into school, we were having to be so aware that we can't be saying to parents, you should do this and you should do that, because like you say, Lynn, they've become the experts in many cases. And the number of parents I've had who said to me, do you know what? I know school have said, Johnny can't do, or, it takes a long time to process things or whatever. Do you know what? I've seen it for myself. And it comes as a revelation to them, because when your child's at school, it doesn't seem like it's something that you can perhaps always relate to, because it might be, I mean, all right, there might be the child struggling with homework and things, you would see that. But actually, what parents are seeing is the process of how their child is actually learning and learning new things, how they're coping with the information that's coming from school. Parents are having to adapt things. And really, I think parents have become, in many cases, fantastic educators. And I'm not saying, and I know I've also had a few who said, but I don't want to do it again because it is very time consuming. I mean, this mother that I have been speaking to about the little boy, she kind of swaps childcare duties with her husband because they work different things. She's a key worker though, so she's doing home education. She's got 2 children. She's then having to try and get some sleep because she's then working night shifts in a key worker role. So you can imagine the pressure on that parent. And so this was why I said to her about walking the dog and things. I said, yes, okay, morning, you can do your core tasks with him, but really the life skills bit in the afternoon, because obviously she's thinking, well, I've got to also get ready to go to work. And it's got to be about what's good for the whole family, hasn't it? It can't just be about the child, and parents are having to juggle enormously, and it must be so difficult for some of them.
I think it's just so good to hear you saying that, what you're saying, and knowing, to support SENCOs in just being kind to parents, to work in with them and to encouraging them. And at the end of this, again, I'm hoping that we have stronger relationships and better working together, and as you say, a more holistic version of education and what it is, that there is all these other things in which we put in EHCPs, but if we can work together with home and school, working on those skills, then we get that generalization as well, don't we? Get the practical applications, and that's good for all our children. Yeah.
So I mean, it is something, it's the way I have always worked, but it's definitely heightened the importance of working that way in the pandemic. And SENCO's out there listening, forget the paperwork, forget ticking boxes, that's not important. And I mean, I'll give you an example of a ridiculous scenario. So the county asked us all to do risk assessments for children with education, health and care plans at home. Right, okay. So I mean, that was we managed to kind of work our way through that, and what I did was I liaised with parents to put things in. So actually I made it into a positive thing. And then somebody would ring up from the DFE or whatever, or the SEND department. Have you got risk assessments in place for these children? Well, yeah, we've done it. Has anybody ever asked for them? No. Has anybody even asked to cast an eye over them, or what was in them? It was a complete and utter waste of time. Now, fortunately, I made it into not being a waste of time, because I used it as an opportunity to share the EHCP targets again with parents, send them home, so that we could use that, feed that into the risk assessment to say, yes, we are still meeting this child's needs. But we were asked to do something, and then nobody's ever asked for it. And you just think, is that how important that was? And who cared about it? Nobody.
Oh, we could go on a lot about all
Oh,
the paperwork,
go,
couldn't we?
we could go
But I
on
think that's
forever.
what I like. And we're bringing it back full circle to your lovely book, because actually I think SENCOs, whether they're new SENCOs or whether you're doing it for a while, we'll find a lot of really good, helpful tips in there, because you are a practical person when it comes down to it. And the child is at the very heart of what you do. The family is at the heart of it. And I think, thank you for all that. That's really good. Thank you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed sharing it. Thank you.
Hey, it's Ian here at Studio TV. Thank you so much for joining us here at Getting It Right for Me Live. Let me ask you a really quick question. Are you here because you are hoping to develop your skills and your knowledge and all your learning and understanding around supporting and caring for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities? I assume that's what you've come here for. We hope that you're enjoying your time here with us. There's some amazing people, and we're so grateful for them coming and being part of this. And we're so grateful for you to be joining us as well. There's a couple of things I just really quickly wanted to introduce you to. First of all, don't forget that you can upgrade your ticket at any time to one of the paid tickets, which we try to keep the price as low as we possibly can, just to cover what we need to help out the speakers a little bit, and make sure this event is as good as it can be. What that means is you can access the live Q&A sessions that we're running throughout the event, and you can access all the sessions for up to a year afterwards if you buy one of those paid tickets. Check out the whole school ones. How that works is if you book a whole school ticket, and you can pay online, or you can drop us a line and we'll issue an invoice and we'll sort it all out. That's absolutely fine. But we'll then make it possible for all your staff to be able to access all the sessions here at Getting It Right for Me Live this year. So do hope that's helpful. The other thing I want to mention is, and there are lots of members joining us this week, so thank you so much to those of you who are members, but we have put together, if you're looking to go deeper and access ongoing support and help and training, either as an individual, as a parent, as a professional supporting someone with additional needs, in a school or educational setting, or from a professional point of view, we have put together here at Studio TV with Lynn McCann and her team at Reach Out ASC a fantastic membership that starts at just £10 a month and includes a wide range of courses to help you support those in your care. There's a load of resources and tools, printable things that you can use to work with those children and support them. And there's more content being added all the time. One of my favorite parts of the membership is there is a peer group community that's built into that. So you can ask questions of Lynn and her team and your peers built right into that membership as well. As I say, it starts at just £10 a month. Whole school memberships are there. We're offering trust-wide memberships, and local authorities have started to get in touch and offer this to their staff across a range of schools as well. We would love for you to join our community. If you've got any questions on that, drop us a line, but very much hope to see you there. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the event.